Check, check, check. Hey everyone, how's it going? Nice to see all of you. I'm not Max, unfortunately, but I'm Claire. I'm dolltr. Nice to see all of you over here. Hi to Andrew. Hi also to John. Greetings. It is nice to see the both of you. Welcome back. We have some returning folks joining us. We also have, I think, a couple of other people maybe watching on other places too. I sent a message out on Instagram just now, but hi, we are back here. Like I said, I'm not Max. But I'm subbing for Max today. But my name's Claire, and I'm also one of the other instructors at 343 Labs. I'm an Ableton Certified Trainer. I also go by dolltr. I usually host the Monday show on 343 TV, but here I am hosting the Thursday show. And I've subbed for Max previously before. You might have remembered me from then as well. But the last time that I subbed for Max on Theory Thursday, I did a little bit of synth theory. And what I wanted to do today was maybe, if we have time, a little bit more on that, but I wanted to focus a little bit more on something more on the traditional theory side, perhaps similar to what Max has been doing previously in other weeks too. He's been talking about things like transcription, things like chords. What I wanted to do today was maybe half of that kind of side of things, but also a little bit of some ways that once you have theory knowledge, you can start utilizing some kinds of effects in live, and in this case, we're using a software that's called Ableton Live to do these things. So like I said, Max also is usually a live user because both of us are Ableton Certified Trainers, so we use that pretty heavily. But what I'm going to share with you today can be applied to any DAW. So it's going to be applicable in, say, Logic. You can also use it in Bitwig. If anyone uses Bitwig, let us know if anyone's a Bitwig fan out here. But I'm also a Bitwig certified trainer, so I'm a big Bitwig fan. Have a poster over there in my house with Bitwig on it. But yeah, so going to do a little bit of that today, and specifically going to talk about maybe some words or mention some terminology that maybe people might associate with a little bit more of the how should I describe it? The classical side of things, maybe. Interestingly enough, Max and I also both are flute players, so maybe that's why I'm the appropriate substitute. But we both use live. We both play the flute. Hi, Regine. Nice to see you. Welcome. Welcome back as a returning viewer. Great to see you always in the chat. But yeah, so things like a little bit more on the quote-unquote classical side of things, because people often associate that with like practicing stuff. But when I was big into like the flute stuff as well, and I still am, but big into the classical flute stuff, and even piano, because I'm a classically trained pianist too, arpeggios used to be such a crazy thing. Like maybe that's a term that you've heard before, arpeggios, or broken chords. That's what I wanted to talk a little bit about today. And in relation to that, the idea of voicing in theory and why it's so important to have different kinds of voicings in different registers. So today is going to be a little bit of hybrid theory and production stuff, specifically in live, but with general principles that will be applicable to any kind of DAW. So I do see the numbers kind of changing a little bit for the viewers. Welcome to anyone who just tuned in. This is the 343 Labs YouTube channel. Really happy to be bringing to you another episode of Theory Thursday. And also because I was just thinking of Max, and I was thinking about how he mentioned this in his previous stream too. But if anyone is tuning in from Berlin, I know that we have John from Rockaway Park in New York and a couple of other folks from New York too. But if anyone is in Berlin specifically, our Berlin school is up and running safely, which is great to hear. They opened up in July, I believe, and now we have some regular classes. And Thomas, who is from 343 Labs, is also helping us manage stuff in the chat too. Thomas, do you think if you could drop some links in maybe for some of our Berlin activities, that would be amazing and much appreciated, just so that folks can know about us. Historically, 343 Labs has mostly been active in the New York City area in the United States, but we've since expanded our Berlin school, and that's where Max is. Max is currently in Berlin, away from the rest of us, but we miss him very much, and I hope he misses us too. He's doing lots of amazing stuff with the Berlin School, and you can check out our Instagram as well. We're instagram.com or /343 Labs, and you can see photos of our Berlin School, which is amazing. So we're super happy that we're able to share that with everybody too. And the websites in general are 343labs.com for our New York school, our main school, and our online school, because now we're doing lots of online classes too. But the Berlin School is 343labs.de for Denmark. So Deutschland. That's why it's DE. I remember asking my parents that question when I was much younger. I was like, why is Germany DE? But no, it's Deutschland. That's it though. I'd love to get started today with some suggestions from the chat. So if you are in the chat with us on YouTube, please suggest a number. Let's do a number between 20 to 999 because those are the tempo parameters in live. And let's also maybe have a suggestion for some kind of key. So go ahead and suggest a major or a minor key, please. And if you want to, you can also bring up a specific note that you want. So maybe F major, F minor, things like that. Well, we'll start building up what we have together. And then I'll start talking a little bit about broken chords and arpeggiators. So yeah. Thanks, Thomas, for putting that in the chat. Just saw that as well. Those are our full list of Berlin courses. Very excited for that. Yeah. And I'll just wait for a second and see what suggestions we get for tempos or BPMs and keys as well. While I drink coffee. Still. Let's see if we get any suggestions. Otherwise, I have an idea for a number that we can use. So, let's see. Ooh, yay. Thank you, Regine. Let's do G minor. So over here next to me, everyone, I don't have a camera on it because it's not super crucial for today, but I'm using push for this. Max usually has a keyboard that he uses. I'm using push. So I'm going to change my scale on push to G minor. Thank you, Regine, for that suggestion. G minor. Where's my G? There's my G. Great. Cool. Ooh, we also had 127. Yeah, let's do 127. That's a great one. Maybe some housey kinds of vibes today. So I'm going to change the tempo again from push to 127. Just going to make that number a little higher. And let us do, let's see. Let's turn on the metronome first, just so we get a reminder of what this is. Cool. So there's my metronome. And I've got, ooh, a little bit low, maybe. Oh, no, this is because I was working with analog the last time, right? And I did some like funny sound design kinds of things. So let's bring this down now, move it down an octave. Here we go. Also, that's very loud, so I do apologize. I'm going to adjust my volumes over here, make this way softer. Great. So now we have something in G minor. And what I'm going to do is, if you remember the last time I substituted for the show, I did like synth techniques and theory based off of that. So that's what I'm going to do this time as well. I'm going to, let's see. Oop, cool. Let's pull this up. Let's switch up an instrument. So I'm going to head over to the instruments category. Maybe let's even start with some kind of piano sound. So I'm going to look for maybe an operator patch. And let's see if we can get some interesting synth keys or piano and keys. Let's do like synth keys. That might be fun. Yeah, why not? One of my students was telling me that I use the term why not a lot. And totally, I pretty much think like every moment is a why not movement. So I've got push over here. Let's record in some chord progressions. And let's also turn on accent. So let's record something together. I'm going to make this a little louder too. And let's see what we can do. And so I've got a keys part up. If anyone would like to put in other suggestions for instruments into the YouTube chat, please do. And I'll take a look at them and maybe we'll build out an arrangement before I show you some neat ways to use Arpeggiator for different kinds of chords and different kinds of theory-based techniques that we're thinking of. So suggestions for other parts that we can start building up before we go into the theory side of the Arpeggiator stuff. Here we go. A chord progression in G minor. Cool. Cool, let's quantize that as well. Make this a little softer. Cool. Ooh, I just saw John's suggestion. Maybe we'll do that next time. I'm gonna turn the metronome off as well, because now we've got these chords. What I'm also going to do is select all of these. So I clicked over here and I pressed Control-A or Command-A inside the MIDI note editor. And I pressed the legato button to make all of them longer. And let's move this last chord down an octave too. So now we've got this. Great, cool. Ooh, so it looks like we had a suggestion from Regine. Regine, killing it with the suggestions today. Thank you. Let's do bass. Absolutely. Let's do a bass sound. I'm also going to recolor these tracks a little because I usually think of piano as being kind of purple. And I think of bass as being kind of blue. So let's put some bass on this. And maybe we'll also do some drums just to round things out a little bit. So let's do bass. Let's maybe take an analog bass this time. Sure, why not? And this time, instead of re-recording a bass, what I'm going to do is a technique that I use a lot for my songwriting and theory students as well. But oftentimes when I'm creating a bass line, if I have an existing chord progression, I just copy the chord progression clip that I have over into the bass track, and I go ahead and remove every note that's not the root note. And this is something that Max has mentioned before in his previous streams, if you tuned into his previous streams too. A root note is the bottommost note of a chord. So in this case, I've got my bass track over here, but I'm going to remove any note that is above the bottom note of each of these chords. So now in my bass track, let's go ahead and listen to what this sounds like. So if I'm stopping the clips there, cool. That's that. Ooh. So not very bassy yet, but I'm going to take all of these and bring these down an octave. There we go. And now with these together. Cool. And like I mentioned just now, maybe let's do one more. So let's do some drums. Cool. I'm also going to move that over here. And let's color it orange. Ooh, whoops, wrong orange. Because I usually think of drums as being orange too. Let's do some simple, like housey kinds of drums. I like Regine's suggestion for the 127. I feel like we're kind of like in a housey-ish sort of mood today. So maybe let's look for just a simple kind of drum kit. Let's do a classic, like 909 type of kit maybe, or 707 could be a fun one to do as well. Let's do like a 70. Yeah, let's do this 707 Funky Beans kit. I like the names of a lot of these in live. Sometimes you've got some really interesting things happening. Ooh, also, let's turn that down a little bit in its volume. And let's go ahead and make some 4 on the floor patterns. Add in some claps. Put in some hi-hats maybe. Or different patterns. Let's do. Cool. Great. So we've got all our parts going, but our focus today is the arpeggiator. So I will be focusing in on the chords track in this case, and the piano track. But I will also be unsoloing it now and then, and that was a hint. I'm going to be soloing this a lot. But I'm going to be putting it into context to show you exactly why it's important for us to kind of understand how an arpeggiator works, how it contributes to the theory side of things. And this is something that you'll find in pretty much any DAW that has any kind of MIDI capabilities. It's going to be a MIDI effect called the arpeggiator. So let's head over here and let's take a look at the MIDI effects category all the way on the left-hand side of Ableton Live's browser. And right up top, because it starts with the letter A, we have the arpeggiator. So let's go ahead and click on this, and I'm going to drag it onto my piano track. So now I have the chords, but what's happened to them? Ooh. Cool. And that's actually what an arpeggiator is. It breaks up chords into arpeggios or broken chords. And it's funny that the term itself is broken chords, because that's exactly what's happening. I'm going to temporarily turn off the arpeggiator. But when we speak about arpeggios and scales in theories, usually scales and arpeggios kind of go together a lot. And I wish we could have the license to do this, but if I had my way in class right now, I usually play a clip for students that's called the Scales and Arpeggios clip from the Disney movie, the Disney animation, The Aristocats. I love that movie so much, and there's a really cute song. If you're on YouTube now with us, you can kind of search it up too, but it's called Scales and Arpeggios, and it goes do mi so do so mi do, and it's a really cute song that's about scales and arpeggios and why it's important for us to know our scales and arpeggios. And that's essentially what it is. You're taking the notes of a chord, so you've got the 1, the 3, and the 5 in a chord. So in this case, for example, we started off in G minor thanks to the suggestions we had in the chat. So we've got G, B flat, and D in a minor chord. And again, if you want to know more about building minor chords, you can take a look at the stream that Max has done for that. He did it like right at the beginning of 343 Labs, but we've got G, B flat, and D, and we're essentially saying, okay, take these 3 notes and alternate between them. So, and usually in the context of a lot of practicing that we do for arpeggiatos, we practice moving them up octaves. So I could do something like as a lower octave, and that was very poorly done because my hands were in a weird angle. But that's actually something that I used to do more often than I do now on push, just to like be able to navigate each of these octaves very quickly. So you practice them against a metronome, for example. So something like this. Whoops, let's not do that. Let's stop all the clips for now, but turn on the metronome. So here we go. So to start off, if we wanted to go super easy, we would just play it with every quarter note. So and that's a way that you would practice that. That said, though, with the Arpeggiator device, we no longer need to do that. And that kind of helps us in a way, not by making us lazy, but by saying, okay, here's knowing like the way arpeggios work outside of electronic music production. Here's some cool ways that we can incorporate them into the context of music production instead of just arbitrarily playing them as, exercises. And Thomas, thank you for putting the Aristocats video into the chat. It's super cute. I love looking at it, and I think it's in a different key. It's not in G minor. It's in a major key in that particular video. But that's what they do. They break up the chords. So instead of playing notes at the same time, you are playing them consecutively. So, and depending on the kind of controller that you're using, it'll look a little different. So the way that I practice arpeggios, for example, on a MIDI keyboard is very different from how I play them on Push or Launchpad. So it does take a little bit of practicing, but if anyone out there wants to build up, say, their virtuosity or their performance skills, it's a really great way of getting more familiar with your instrument. And it's in addition to playing scales and going all the way up as well. In the case of the Arpeggiator device, it's like I have to make that distinction. The Arpeggiator creates arpeggios. So if I turn the device on right now, you'll notice that my MIDI notes are still playing chords, but my chords themselves are broken up. So here we go. Cool. And if we take a closer look at Arpeggiator as the device itself, you'll notice a couple of things about the device. One of the things that might stand out is this little drop-down menu that says Style over here. There's a couple of different styles that you can switch between. One of them right now is up, which is a very common kind of arpeggio pattern, going upwards. And I'm going to again turn Arpeggiator off so I can play this for you. Going upwards. Da-da-da. Going up. Also going to make this a little louder. Cool. That's going upwards and an arpeggio. Of course, you can also come down. What goes up must come. I think the saying is what goes up must come down. It doesn't have to come down, but it could come down. So instead of going up, you could also get coming down as well. So maybe that's something that you might have heard also. And maybe just to put this into even more context, and a very common kind of arpeggio is, or a common instance of an arpeggio, we'll send out a virtual props to whoever managed to just catch that, although it's in a different key. if we play that in a minor key, there's minor versions of this out on the internet, but for I think like more sinister versions of that. But absolutely, that's something to also remember as to why arpeggios are important. They can help you create lots of really cool melodies too. So yeah, we've got up, we've got down as a different pattern, and there are other different kinds of patterns here too. You might have also noticed that when I turned on this arpeggiator device, we were arpeggiating in one octave only. So that means I was cycling between the same 3 notes that I initially had lined up over here in my chords clip. Over there. I was just cycling between these 3 notes. This also means that when I play the next chord, so when I play this chord, I'm also going to end up cycling between these 3 notes if I have the arpeggiator set to its default. That said, we can always look at the device and try playing a little bit with its parameters. So right now I'm set to up, and I've got this going. Ooh, what if I decided to change this knob over here that says steps? Let's see what we get. Cool. So now we've got a different kind of arpeggio pattern. We're going up, but it seems to be extending beyond what we initially did. So we had, ooh, wait, I need to turn the arpeggiator off for this. So now we have 2 octaves instead of that 1 octave that we initially had. And ooh, I just saw the numbers change a little bit also. So welcome to anyone who just joined. We are 343 Labs. We're very happy to have you here. I'll take a quick break in another moment to speak more about us because I just spoke about us. But that's the first part about arpeggiators. You can kind of control how you're playing them in terms of the order, but also the octave. And this is really neat because you can then add different kinds of textures. For good measure, what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this track over here that I have. So now I have 2 of my piano tracks. But for one of them, and I'll make it this one that's selected over here. For this one, I'm going to leave the arpeggiator on. For this other one, I'm going to delete it. So that way, if we played this together for everybody, we'll be able to hear the differences. So here we go. Cool. And as a bit of a side note for production techniques, this is something that could be a really great tool to help you spruce up your chords a little bit and make your production side of things more interesting, provided you know the theory behind it. So I've got this. And maybe if I want to add more movement, I'll put on some arpeggios. If I launch the clips at the same time, of course. I need to make sure that the chords match. So here we go. Yeah, cool. Oh, Regine said, I like the sound steps to arpeggiator with the minor chord. Yeah, totally. I like that too. I think it adds a lot of extra movement to it. And the cool thing about it also is that using the arpeggiator device, if you do have it pulled up, you have the option of also changing some other parameters that affect, for example, how often you are hearing these arpeggiations too. Right now, we're set to 8th notes. And this is an important part of the theory side of the rhythmic theory side of this. But as far as rhythmic stuff goes, when you're playing an arpeggiator, you can control how fast it goes too if you're using the device. So right now I'm set to 8th notes and it sounds like this. If I wanted to make this a bit more active, I have the option of changing this to, let's say, 16th notes. And it's still arpeggiating, but definitely a different vibe. Maybe because of that, I could even make it go up into even higher octaves. So it could sound like I'm doing like super virtuosic things, like all the way up the octave. But in this case, ooh, whoops. In this case, I'm just changing a couple of parameters. So here we go. Here's the new modified arpeggiator sound. It's going all the way up. Yeah, I like that a lot. So that's one of my favorite things to do with arpeggiators, and it is in a way a little bit of a throwback to some of the stuff I used to do as a child when practicing things like scales and arpeggios and so on. But back to the note side of things, one thing you may have noticed me do just now when I was demonstrating exactly what an arpeggio is practicing going both up and also down. So, and then coming back down. And again, I apologize for the bad timing. I'm in a very weird sort of angle. It's funny. I joke with people about how normal mics make me feel very strange now because I usually have my headset mic for my dolltr performances, but no, it's all good. But yeah, so practicing going up, practicing coming back down as well. That's something that you can do with Arpeggiator too. And yeah, Regine, totally. 16th notes kind of takes it to like a trancier sort of place, right? Especially imagine if we had some kind of kick and if we made the tempo a little bit faster. In fact, why don't we do that? Let's take this to a trancier sort of place. So I've got this right now. We're in house mode, kind of. Let's make all of these a little softer so that you can hear me speaking over. Let's do 16th notes in the arpeggiator. And let's also temporarily mute the hats and the claps. Then we'll bump up the tempo. And bump up the drums. Let's also do longer gate. Yeah, I feel like all we need now is just like a little bit of side chaining for that, and it'll be awesome. We could even do that super quickly, but don't want to get too far ahead of things. That said, no, this is absolutely something that you could do, and I think arpeggiators work really great for that. They're very beautiful, I find, when you have the right sound for it. In this case, we got pretty lucky with this granite piano sound that I pretty arbitrarily picked. I think that also kind of demonstrates how, if you understand theory and if you understand how certain things can sound, especially if you become familiar with the sound of arpeggios and how they work, you can really use them to your advantage. And knowing the name of it is just important to start with, right? Because then you can kind of make connections between things that you're hearing and things that you're seeing as well in live. So just to demonstrate further, we've been doing a lot of up stuff, but like I said, you can absolutely come down. So let's come down in our trancier mode now. Cool. I'm going to stop the rest of the clips, but that's what the arpeggiator is doing. So it's starting all the way up this time and it's coming back down. So if I were to simplify the arpeggiator, just so we get a clearer idea of what it's actually doing, I'm going to bring the steps down to 0, but I'm also going to maybe decrease the rate a little bit. So this is the basis of the down action. If we add another step, which is one step first, accidentally did 2. So it comes down, but in a higher octave too. And 2 steps like we had just now. So so slowly going up in the octave, but coming all the way down. Yeah. So that's always one of the funnest things I love to do with like arpeggios, just messing around with them a little bit. And of course, one of the very popular ones, like I mentioned, was up down. So you also have that option too. Which I like a lot as well. So it's like going all the way up. Cool. So that's something pretty interesting as well that I like to do with arpeggios and arpeggiators too. Changing the way different things work. Regina, yeah, this is so beautiful. I think it's really nice too. Maybe you can create a song with vocals. Oh, should we do that now? I have lots of songs. In fact, one of my singles that I recently released was like half house, half trancey kinds of things. It's called Fade. So if anyone wants to check that out, it's Fade by dolltr under my artist project. And yeah, I like a lot of like trancey kinds of sounds. I love sidechaining, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I joked about how with one of my friends how if I didn't have controllers in my life, and if my superhero name wasn't Controller Lady, which we joke that it is as a running gag on 343 TV, if my name wasn't Controller Lady, I'd probably be like Sidechain Lady or something like that. Sidechain Woman or I don't know, compressor woman. If like there has to be some kind of nice name for that, but cool. Hi Andrew, greetings. Halifax, Canada. Yeah, nice to see you. Thanks for joining in. Great to see you. Yeah, so right now, let's see if we can play all of this back at the moment. And trancier stuff. Cool. Now, a part of the reason why it's cool to understand how the arpeggiator works, so again, what the arpeggiator is doing is it's going between different notes that are in a chord that you're playing at once, and then kind of switching in between all of them. Why that's important to know is because knowing this, you can then use it for a bunch of other things too. So I'm going to show you some really neat tricks that you can do once you understand how, in theory, the arpeggiator works. So I'm going to create a new drum clip over here, and it's just going to be really short. But what I'm going to do is I'm also going to unmute my hi-hat and clap. Maybe let's go back to Houseland for a little bit, just so I can demonstrate how this works. But I've got this set up, right? Cool, doing pretty all right. If I wanted to use the arpeggiator to do some like interesting kinds of things, we can head over here, and maybe what I like to do is see if let's see if this works. It may or may not work, and I have a feeling it will. So one thing that I try to do sometimes using the arpeggiator is put in some toms and create some fills. So what I'm doing now is, as you can see, I have a tom that goes on for 1 bar. And I know some people are thinking like, what is this woman doing? So you'll see why. So again, we're keeping in mind what arpeggiator is useful for. Here's something that I like doing. I like creating these tom clips that are going to help me act as fills. So check this out. I've got 3 toms, I think, in this particular drum kit. I've got a high tom, a mid tom, and a low tom. Let's see what happens if I drag an arpeggiator onto this. And I'm going to change the style of the arpeggiator to random. So let me just illustrate this as well with the normal arpeggiator. Here is our arpeggiator on the piano. If I put this into random mode instead, so right now I've got this set to I think up down normally. If I set this to random, let's give this a shot. So you'll now hear that everything is kind of playing randomly, which is the point of playing the random mode when you're working with an arpeggiator. The thing about this, though, is that now you're kind of like saying, okay, you can randomly play different kinds of patterns as and when you like. So that's how the random stuff works. That's it for the melodic arpeggiator. I'm going to keep it as up-down. We'll keep it like this. But for our arpeggiator on the drums, let's set that to random. And let's see what this sounds like. Let's also do random other so that we get more of a change. And this is a really great way, actually, of thinking about different kinds or random ones. Different kinds of repeats. Let me also quantize this, make sure it's all set up correctly. If this works. Boop. There we go. Quantize that. Great. So switching between the different kinds of patterns. This could be good for creating different kinds of fills. As a little bit of a heads up, that's why you would want to do something like this. It's like, why would you ever want to put something on an arpeggiator? But of course, then we need to have a different track for drums also. So now I'm going to separate those out. I'm going to have one that's for my fills and one that's just for my normal kinds of drums. And And I'm also going to delete the arpeggiator from that too. Hi, Eric. Greetings to Eric. Eric's a friend of mine from Genelec. The very cool Genelec folks are always very nice and always big fan of their 8010s. Yay! Genelec, cool. So let's see if we can get this working. I'm going to unsolo this particular track and let's get everything going and we'll add in some fills. Let's do 16. Fill. Ooh, whoops. What might also help is if we change this clip's launch mode a bit. So this is way more advanced stuff, but it's programming that I usually do for like live shows and stuff like that. So here we go. Let's see if this works. It will work. But. Yeah, just a little bit of palette wetter, taste bud wetter for the things that you can do with an arpeggiator once you understand why it works that way and what an arpeggio really is. And that's actually something that I like to do a lot also for bass lines sometimes. For example, you'll notice that over here, we've got this bass line. So let's put an arpeggiator on this. Now, keeping in mind that an arpeggiator, like I said, it takes a note that's played over time and it repeats that. If you have a chord, it'll repeat each of these like notes that you have in that chord and alternate between that. What happens if you just drag a default arpeggiator onto a bass line? Well, maybe we can guess, okay, are things going to be repeated? But we don't have a chord. So what is getting broken up? Interesting question. Let's take a listen. So here is the bass with an arpeggiator on it. Yeah. In context. So this ends up shedding a lot of light on certain things that programming and using an arpeggiator can be useful for. Instead of having to do the bass line, if I wanted to make this more active, instead of having the bass do the entire thing like and having to press a note all the time in a lower octave especially, even lower than that, I think. Yeah. Instead of having to do that, I can call up the power of an arpeggiator. Because if you think about it, instead of going all the way up, you're just taking that one note and arpeggiating that one note. And then you don't even need to think of other kinds of, patterns really, but let's say you wanted to add a little bit of variation. We can change the steps. So, which maybe is a little bit banal, but just as a starting point. But then it could be good to do something like this. Do like a little bit of randomness. So arpeggiator for days. You can do tons and tons of things with arpeggiators too. One thing that I did do a lot of though that maybe might seem a little bit strange from the perspective of say someone who's been classically trained before is that I used to analyze a lot of the way that live would arpeggiate different kinds of things. And there's a very interesting way that you can do this. I'm going to show you how to do it. And I'd love to see what ideas people get from this because it can be useful depending on what you think of it. So I'm going to create a new MIDI track in Live. I'm going to pull up Command-Shift-T and it's going to give me a new MIDI track over here. Now, instead of putting an instrument on this, what I'm going to do for now is take my MIDI from in this MIDI track and say MIDI from Granite Piano. And now we'll see a couple of things happen if I arm that track. Now I'm going to take take a quick pause here. And Regine said, random arpeggiator makes it more unique. Yeah, totally. I think the randomness does throw things around a little bit and spice things up a little bit too. So absolutely, I love using the random part of the arpeggiator too. But I just did all of this super quickly. You might have seen me just do a couple of very strange things in a row with this like new MIDI clip. But check that out. Now we have some newly recorded MIDI patterns over here. And I used to use this to like analyze stuff. But this again is our, it's our up-down pattern with a longer gate, which means that the notes themselves are stretching out for longer periods of time. So there's that too. Now, let's see if we can maybe find a different instrument to put on this. And it'll give us immediately some different kinds of sounds. And you've got all of the actual arpeggiated notes hanging out. So let's grab we haven't done any kind of mallet thing yet. So let's grab a mallet maybe. Let's get some from analog. Yeah. Let's do, sure, why not? So now we've got this as an arpeggiated mallet clip. Ooh, and this minor metal clip, it is a little bit chordy. So maybe let's find this. Maybe there's a little bit of pattern. Little crazy stuff. Also because I think this instrument has a lot of delay in it. So if we find a simpler sort of instrument, it'll be more conducive for us. Maybe this, like synth keys. Ooh. Cool. Ooh, this is making my live go super crazy. I think it's because like it might be a little bit more CPU heavy, but that's okay. We can also jump into operator, pull up a different sound. Ooh, yeah. Like this kind of cute sort of sound. And the great thing about this is that now that I've recorded the MIDI from the arpeggiator, I can do cool things with the notes themselves. So I can grab all of the notes and make these actually shorter. Because right now their gates are super long too. So I can make these like super short. I can also reverse them in their order. So there's a couple of really neat features in the MIDI note editor. If you have that pulled up, on the left-hand side where you see all the information about the notes, you can have certain things like legato, reverse, invert, make things half the length, so on and so forth. So you got that. You can also reverse it. So let's reverse this. It's going backwards instead. Just for context, let's give us a metronome. We can change a couple of parameters. And let's unsolo. And then we can go ahead and also change the arpeggiator parameters too, right? So maybe let's go with what Regine said. The random arpeggiator does make it a little bit more unique. So I'm going to put this to random, and I'm maybe going to also change the steps as well, and also drop the piano down by an octave, I think, for the arpeggiated sound. So now we'll have a couple more different variations. Here we go. Reverse it back up. Cool. Yeah, so different kinds of things that you can do with the arpeggiators once you kind of understand the basics of how they work. And based on this, we can even create some kind of performance, right? And you can record the MIDI notes into something else. That's also something that's really useful too. And also do the fills. So I just saw a bunch of people join in. The numbers are always changing, and I try to keep a lookout for that. So hi to everyone who might have just joined in. We are 343 Labs. You can find us over across the internet, but you're watching 343 TV right now. This is a show that we do every day at 1 p.m. And today's topic for Theory Thursday, I'm not usually here. Usually it's Max Wild, who's our co-founder, who's currently in Berlin and is working on opening the Berlin school that we have over there, because usually we're in Manhattan. And usually Max does Theory Thursday, but hi, I'm here. I usually host the Monday show. I'm Claire, and I'm another instructor at 343 Labs and an Ableton Certified Trainer as well. So that's why we're here in Ableton Live, doing a lot of work on what it means to maybe incorporate arpeggios, which are a very common thing in music theory, especially with scales and arpeggios too. And if you just joined in, there's a link that Thomas from 343 Labs popped in to the chat about how scales and arpeggios were used in a popular Disney movie many years ago called The Aristocats. I'm not even sure how long ago that movie was, but I remember watching it when I was a kid, and it was already kind of old then. So maybe that dates me a little bit too. But yeah, so that's what we've got going on here. And we also took a moment to speak a little bit about how arpeggiators could also be used once we understand how they work and how an arpeggio works, how a broken chord works. We can also use them on things like drums that are not that don't contain any kinds of melodic notes. You can use them on bass, absolutely. Like for example, we created this bass line with an arpeggiator. A little bit of a random sort of thing. So we got that. Cool. But for drums, you can do things like add fills. So, whoops, hearing some other things like played at the wrong time. Cool. Just gonna make this a little bit quieter. And I'll just play the drums and the bass for now so that we can hear this more clearly. You kind of do that as well. Adding different kinds of fills. Cool. Ooh. Regine, would you put arpeggiator on every MIDI instrument or just do a few for creating the track? So I would that's a great question. I do think that answer is tied very closely to what your vision is for that track. That track. Had a lot of coffee. If you're just thinking about experimenting, then yeah, why not put an arpeggiator on everything? I think it could be cool. But if you have ideas for specific, I think, sounds that you want to use on a track. So let's say, for example, that I specifically want to have some kind of held chords, then I would probably say, okay, in that case, maybe just for, why am I muting everything? Was meaning to unmute. Then maybe for my chords then, I don't want an arpeggiator on that, because having an arpeggiator would change it up, right? So here is my original chords that I had. The moment I drop an arpeggiator onto it, it kind of destroys that sort of held out feeling, especially if I'm looking maybe for a more lush, filled out sort of sound, because it kind of strips all of that away and takes that out. And in fact, one of my younger students gave a really great, not necessarily an analogy, but a great short definition, quote unquote, for what an arpeggiator does, or what it tries to do at least. And that is, an arpeggiator is really good for taking chords or chord progressions and letting you create melodies out of them. Because if you think about it, a melody, is it's one note at a time. You're playing things one after the other consecutively usually. So because of that, an arpeggiator basically does that too. It takes a chord that you have and breaks it apart so that you're playing notes one after the other. And it's a good short way and a quick way of transforming some chords into melodies. So I hope that kind of answers the question, Regina. I think it really depends on what vision you have. That said, though, I will mention that the arpeggiator has a really neat feature also that lets you play chords. But remember how we had the bass sound and it was kind of like repeating itself? So if I'm going to make one more duplicate of the arpeggiator track over here. And not the arpeggiator track, the chords track, excuse me. And I'm going to put on one last instance of arpeggiator. And in this case, let's see what happens if I play with the mode a little bit, the style. So here I've got the style set to up. There's a style that's also called chord trigger. So this could help too. Maybe if I tweaked this a little bit more, we can offset these a little. Let's also bring these up an octave. So we got that going. Regine said Lady Gaga uses, yeah, totally. So interestingly enough, I think she uses them in the backgrounds. She or her producers use them. But whenever I think of that like octavey bass line, kind of similar to what we had over here, I always think of the opening of Poker Face, which is one of her tunes, one of the first Lady Gaga tunes that I was like totally into. I like Lady Gaga a lot too. Also, her recent album Chromatica is like so awesome. Sorry, Lady Gaga fangirl side coming out. But yeah, no, totally. I think of the opening theme for Poker Face. I believe it's like if I take off the arpeggiator, I might be able to recreate it for a little bit. Let's see. But it's not technically an arpeggiator. It sounds similar to it, but it's like, and it's that was a terrible singing version of that. But yeah, so totally, it can absolutely be used in a creative and inspiring way as a basis for a song, a starting point for an idea. In this case, even for like fill stuff. And like I just showed you, we had the chordal stuff. So I find the chord trigger thing actually really useful for anyone who might be into, say, like future bassy sorts of things. You can get a little bit of mileage out of this. So if I solo this track, got this right now, but let's maybe slow this down a little bit. If I change the pattern of this arpeggiator a little, let's do 16th notes instead. Let's do this. Maybe not super crazy. Cool. Starting to change these a little. Here we go. If anyone's thinking of like future bassy kinds of things. Maybe with less of an attack too. Something like that. We would need more time to do the sound designy part of it. But yeah, absolutely. That's what you can do as well. Yeah, Poker Face. Totally. I like the little emoji. But yeah, that's kind of just an overview of the what it means to have arpeggiators in music theory, everyone, and how you can kind of put that into context, especially when you're thinking about maybe spicing up your productions a little bit. Like, it's one thing to have the 4 pillars of music production. I call it the 4 pillars of music production. It's a very strange, fancy term, I guess. It's a little bit like the 4 pillars of hip hop. A lot of people talk about that too. But you've got the drums, you've got the bass, the chords, and the melody. Within that, there are so many other things that you can do too, like, you know, changing up the drums, adding in a bit of fill. If I play all of this back together while unsoloing stuff, we have a lot of textures now. So, and fill. To make sure that you stop the arpeggiator. Our stream for today. Yay. Thanks so much, everyone, for tuning in. Really appreciate all of y'all watching. Once again, we are 343 Labs. That was pretty much our nice short introduction today. I think we had a couple of new people join in too. So once again, I'll just maybe finish off by saying, if you enjoyed what you were seeing, please subscribe to our 343 Labs YouTube channel. We have lots of really great activities lined up for the next month. As a little bit of a hint, fall season's going to be great. We may or may not have 343 TV returning, so just a little bit of a hint. And we need to speak about that soon. But really excited to be bringing you some more new content. Hope that it's been useful for you, for anyone who's been tuning in. And it's so lovely to see people in our community still connecting with us, even though we're in quarantine, we're far apart. With Max like halfway across the world, for example. But no, really happy to see everyone here. Thank you so much all again for tuning in. This was really fun. And I will also be subbing for Max again next week. So you'll see me again. Maybe we'll talk about some fun stuff too. And as always, if you have questions, please let us know in the chat. You can also drop us a line and visit our website at 343labs.com. Lots of exciting new classes coming up too for fall. So we've got lots of like different things lined up and activities that are ready to go. We're so excited that you can join us for them. But until next time, everyone, this has been dolltr. It's been really fun to see all of you again. And I will see you next Thursday or on Monday too for my usual show. So until next time, everyone. See you then. Bye.
You've called me in a landslide every time when you tell me that you want me by your side. Got me tied by the heartstrings, honey. And then you go and cross the line. No, it's a different kind of lie when you tell me that you need me in your life. Cause I know you're never guilty, honey. You suffocate me in my mind, can't you hear me cry? My knees are shaking, the ground beneath breaking with the sound of you forsaking me. I don't need disaster, the ruins of the aftermath's light. Call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. You watch me as I tremble yet again. Force me down and take me under your command. All your dirt has got me caving, honey. Somehow you got the upper hand, yeah. So I'm praying for salvation from the heavens above to save me from the reverie I thought was love. You were amazing, honey. But now I know I've had enough. Can't you hear me cry? My knees are shaking, the ground beneath quaking with the sound of you forsaking me. I don't need disaster, the ruins of the aftermath's life. You call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. No. So baby, please, why won't you let me leave? That's all I wanted. You're changing me. Over the edge I go, and now I'm falling in all your fantasy. Don't forget all the reason the light has abandoned my eyes. Oh, I'm buried from the inside. You call me in your landslide. You call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. No. You've caught me in a landslide every time when you tell me that you want me by your side. Got me tied up by the heartstrings, honey. And then you go and cross the line. No, it's a different kind of lie when you tell me that you need me in your life. Cause I know you're never guilty, honey. You suffocate me in my mind, can't you hear me cry? My knees are shaking, the ground beneath quaking with the sound of you forsaking me. I don't need disaster, the ruins of the aftermath slide. Call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. You watch me as I tremble yet again, force me down and take me under your command. All your dirt has got me caving, honey. Somehow you got the upper hand, yeah. So I'm praying for salvation from the heavens above to save me from the reverie I thought was love. You were amazing, honey. But now I know I've had enough. Can't you hear me cry? My knees are shaking, the ground beneath quaking with the sound of you forsaking me. I don't need disaster, the ruins of the aftermath slide. You got me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. No, so baby, please, why won't you let me leave? That's all I wanted. You're changing me. Over the edge I go, and now I'm falling in all your fantasies. Don't forget all the reason the light has abandoned my eyes. Oh, I'm buried from the inside. You call me in your landslide. You call me in a landslide. Call me in a landslide. No, I'm buried, but I swear I'm gonna make it out alive. You've called me in a landslide every time when you tell me that you want me by your side. Got me tied up by the heartstrings, honey. And then you go and cross the line. No, it's